was the one of the judges at the International CX Awards in Amsterdam. David is a consultant, a businessman. He is like a seasoned expert in CX in Europe and in the United States. And we have asked David to share his experience from Amsterdam and his learning he have taken from this event. So, David, the first question I would like to ask you is, what are your main insights and main learnings from 20th of November in Amsterdam?
Well, first off, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you there. Hello, everybody there in Russia. It's great to have this opportunity. With regards to Amsterdam, what I was really impressed with was the passion in which people spoke about customer experience from many different angles. If you look at where I'm coming from, really from much more of a behavioral and innovation perspective. But if you look at other people really looking at things from a business perspective or from a spreadsheet perspective and looking really at business cases. So really all the different viewpoints and bringing that into view and how you interact with each other to really create what is best practice, what is applicable for this or that market, and to hear what's going on in all different areas of the world. That's really interesting to me.
Okay, if we talk like about new market that are just starting their way into customer experience, what do you think would be the most important learnings the companies in Russia and all other parts of the world who are just starting their CX journey, what they could learn from this event?
I think the biggest thing you can learn from it is to realize it's not just something you do. It's not just something you say, oh, let's just do something along the lines of customer journey or customer experience, and as if all of a sudden it's magic dust. It's a mindset. It's a behavioral shift as a company, as a culture. Really putting your customers first, and that's for many companies very difficult to do. What are you contributing to your customers, not from your perspective, but from their perspective? That's really what I believe is the major shift that we're seeing in the market right now. And if you look at the learnings of Dimming and looking at service excellence and that type of thing, really it's a progression over the past 30, 40 years and how that's evolved. But as time has moved on, I think we're seeing really how companies can make a difference, countries can make a difference by really stepping back for a second and saying, hey, maybe we ought to really invest in this. And that's exciting to me. So my advice would be, don't just do it as something, hey, what are we going to do next quarter? No, what are you going to do from this point forward to serve your customers better?
Okay, thank you. What we see from our experience working with Russian companies is there is a lot of interest to measurements and setting up a system of controlling and managing the CX experience.
Mm-hmm.
In your opinion, what are the most important metrics a company should start from?
Depending upon what your point of departure is, yeah, that's going to define that. Obviously, you need to look at profit and loss. Obviously, you need to look at customer retention. I think just going after acquisition and that type of thing is really foolhardy, because if you're trying to pull companies in without taking care of what you already have, then you're basically it's a defeating purpose. You're defeating the purpose of the whole relationship. So depending upon where you're at in your market, are you a startup? Are you an existing company, a mature company? That's going to have an effect on that answer, to be honest with you. So to just say one blanket statement, that I'm not so sure that's going to help anybody.
And if you look like specifically into customer experience and everything related to customer journey or customer
Sure.
loyalty, customer satisfaction, what would be like the first steps, where to start from in terms of metrics?
Well, a lot of companies work with NPS. I'll be honest with you, I'm not always convinced that that's the best thing to use. The Net Promoter Score, for those of you that don't necessarily know what NPS means, the question is whether that's net promoter score or not performing score. So, really there's a balance in there. So, depending upon the culture, here in the Netherlands, to get a 10, which is, the high end of the scale with NPS, to get a 10 here in the Netherlands, you basically need to have an act of God. And even then, I have my doubts whether or not you're going to get it. So, it depends on what the culture is, at the end of the day, I think what's important is measure customer satisfaction in whatever form you're measuring that. Um, to really have more insights to what your customers are looking for, what makes them happy, and where they're headed, and really looking in that direction and developing metrics around that to try to be a step ahead. Obviously, you've got your profit and loss, and you need to be able to sustain. But those are baseline business metrics. Really focusing on metrics for your customers. I would say make your customers matter. How do you measure that? How are you measuring that? What are you doing to sustain that through the right metrics? And for every company, and I'm not trying to be vague on this, but I think it does differ. I'm not so sure that it's one size fits all.
Okay, thank you, David. Thank you very much. And probably just concluding our conversation, you're a seasoned expert that have worked in different countries with large companies.
Yep.
What would be your advice to the companies who are on the start of their CX journey? From your experience and looking from your perspective.
Never forget who pays your bills. It's your customers. We have a tendency to ask self-serving questions to defend our existing strategies. And as we evolve as companies, we have a tendency to focus on what we're doing with the assumption that it's right. I think continually engaging with your customers is really going to be important and enable you to take that step forward, to really make sure that your customers feel like, hey, I'm in this too. We're in this together. You're not just a supplier, but you're a partner. And I think that's really where you make that difference there, and really trying to understand who your customers are, what they're thinking, what they're doing, where they're heading, and understanding what success means to them. So whether as a startup or a company starting in that journey, continually have a view of who your customers are, what they're wanting, and realize that touch points, your customers don't see touch points, they see you. They see you. So if you've got 9 or 10, maybe 20 steps in your customer journey, if you treat everything as a touch point and you're not managing them properly, you only need one to pull your whole
The whole thing
pull the whole thing out. So you need to, I would say, reduce the amount of touch points, so to speak. Make sure it's a simplified journey as possible, but meeting the needs of your customers. Communicate in the way your customers want to communicate. Does that help?
Thank you very much, David. Thank you for your time. And
Sure.
yeah, appreciate your advice.
Great. Thanks. Have a great day.